Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation podcast, where we discuss the exciting innovations that lie ahead for organizational ground transportation. Each episode, we cover topics tailored to those resolving transportation-related challenges and provide tips, tools, and trends that will inspire you to stay ahead of the curve. And now, here's your host, Daniel Perez.
Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation. Today we have a special guest, Sarah Gryniewicz. Sarah, thank you for joining the Future of Transportation podcast. How are you doing today?
Good, my pleasure. Having a good time.
Perfect. It's a pleasure having you today with us. So just let's get right into the weeds. Tell us a little bit about Sarah. Tell us a little bit about your background, and we'll go from there.
Well, yeah, my name is Sarah Gryniewicz. I have had kind of a long, probably 12 years in public transportation and really love it. I was a Peace Corps volunteer after college, and that was really a helpful experience for me, but I got really interested in what made a good community of place and kind of what kind of infrastructure made a community successful or not. And so I ended up getting a degree in urban planning, graduated during a recession, and kind of found my way into transportation and transit, and I've loved it ever since.
Got it. What brought you into the sort of the transportation or public sector? What got you intrigued?
Yeah, I like the common good and thinking about kind of how do things work? How does our society work together? Kind of, and what makes a good civic community? In grad school, I read Robert Putnam's Bowling Alone, and it was very transformative to me to think about the role of cars and how they impact how we interact with people. And transportation is like wonderfully complex, especially shared transportation has kind of a ecological complexity. And so it's fascinating, and you can work on it and try to improve it, but it takes a whole group of practitioners and people, et cetera, to make a difference there. So it's kind of just endlessly interesting and super important.
Got it. Thank you, Sarah. And you're originally from Michigan?
Well, I grew up in Ann Arbor, and I'm a happy Detroiter.
Awesome. So tell us about your current role and where are you now? I know you started in public transportation sector, and then tell us where are you now and where you foresee yourself, going forward pretty much.
I'm an explorer, so we'll see where I'm going. I'll discover that every year. So I love transit. I love transit drivers and transit people and transit challenges. I was kind of ready for a change, and May mobility came up kind of on my radar, and I started interviewing. They're a very interesting AV company. They're not a robo-taxi model. They are interested in shared transportation. But I was joking with my husband that I was like, I'm not an AV person. Like, I'm not going to work for a tech company. But as I was talking with May, they're asking all of the right questions. And so I'm a strategist, and that was really intriguing to me. And so ended up taking the job, and I now work as kind of a strategist on the commercial team, where I do a lot of teaching people how transportation works. We've got really brilliant technologists developing incredible vehicles, but I'd also really like them to be used in a good way and to help improve our shared transportation networks, not just be innovation for innovation's sake, but really help solve the key problems that we have in a lot of our communities.
Got it. So when you said, particular vehicles, help us understand a little bit of what is the main focus on May mobility, and what are the focuses on the type of vehicles you guys sort of focusing on?
Yeah. So May Mobility is making incredible AV vehicles that can drive themselves. But our target or our vision would be that they are probably best used in shared fleets, especially in transit agencies in cities, but also kind of private campuses, et cetera. And, I love transit agencies. They often know where the mobility gaps are and the where the problems are, etc. And they also run other kinds of services that are fulfilling all kinds of needs. I think that AVs can be like a really important kind of shock by creating kind of less expensive, more affordable on-demand mobility. And if you can fit that into the greater transit network, you can make it possible for many, many more people to use transit effectively and conveniently, and making it a really viable and good option for them.
Got it. Thank you, Sarah. So you bring a great point, because ultimate, I always ask myself, who's going to pay for the tab, right? Just how we see in the trend in electrical vehicles, whether it's transit authorities or Fortune 1000 companies, everybody wants to get on the train of the electrical vehicles. But when it comes into digesting the cost, there's some major pushbacks there. So how do you foresee sort of the end users adjusting to the price to entry, whether it's for transit agencies or Fortune 1000 companies that want to really embrace the AVs? How do you see that sort of transitioning to the new norm?
Yeah. This is where we get into the ecological complexity of transportation. But, in short, I have some anxieties about especially a robo-taxi AV model and it creating one affordable mobility. It's one thing to take a robo-taxi after a really fun Friday night, but if you're trying to get to work every day, you need it to be kind of reliable and affordable. And a lot of that comes from kind of efficient planning and shared mobility. And so, transit agencies work really hard on that. They're not perfect, but they do have subsidies and they are actively thinking about how to make the entire network work. And so I would love for AVs to be in that network. And some of those trips may very well need to continue to be subsidized, but we also pay a lot in roads and gas taxes, etc. But a lot of those subsidies are also hidden. It's not quite as hidden in transit, but I think there's a huge public need and public good in making the transportation system work well because it unlocks opportunities for people. It unlocks the economy. It's one of those essentials. So there's some reasons to have, public funding for those things. But can we make that public funding kind of intelligent and make it a really good investment for us all?
Totally. That's well said, Sarah. What about from a safety component? Safety and compliance, what are your concerns? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think nobody loves to pay for safety, but we all need it. But it's hugely important for AVs. There's a lot discussed about the cars we make them fairly safe. Unfortunately, they're often not safe for vulnerable road users. And so I think at May, our primary focus is to make sure that there are safe operations. And that's with a full sensor suite so the AVs can see everything, but also programming them and expecting them to obey the rules of the road, respect pedestrians, respect bicyclists. I think that's AVs are still maturing somewhat, but I think that is the road is like, how do you create a vehicle that behaves well and doesn't get distracted? It's not inebriated. It behaves itself. And I think that could be a major shift to greater road safety, but also especially for vulnerable road users. But to validate that, there's lots and lots of testing. There's, adequate sensors. And then we work with, a safety council and external experts. So it's not just us saying it's safe. We have a kind of a strict methodology for making these safety promises come true.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. And the magic question, and what I often get asked, whether it's by listeners or by other guests that we have here in the podcast, is how far away are we from like fully being into sort of the autonomous at a full throttle, semi throttle? Like what sort of projections do you see personally from your own perspective?
Good question. So May is working hard on kind of driver out, and that's the point of an AV. And I think later this year we're going to be taking a driver out in the community, and I think there's going to be lots of our partner communities that are going to continue to want a driver in so that they kind of see how it works and prove it. But eventually we'll also take that driver out so it's a rider only service. And that's where you really unlock a lot of the better economics and the full potential of an AV to create more transportation options for people that they don't have to have their own car. I think it'll take a couple of years of kind of proving that out and saying, yeah, this is something that we accept. It works in our community. It fits. So there's going to be a natural maturation process. I'm really excited about May's approach because we worked really hard on what I would call like change with a community and change with riders as opposed to kind of change to. It's one thing to say, hey, AVs are here, they're safe. It's another thing to say, no, we want these as part of our community. We want this data. We want to put them in this region for this reason. And so it's a much more kind of thoughtful approach. And I think government isn't super fast, but I think it's one of these things that they are going to have the power to improve their mobility systems, but do it together and kind of not in isolation. And I really think AVs are best used as part of a network, not just as another layer on top, kind of competing with all of these other systems and efficiencies.
Got it. Thank you, Sarah. So help me understand as a 5-year-old, what is sort of the business model when it comes to, when you mentioned the network and the vehicles that you guys are creating, what will be the sort of the business model that you guys are creating? Is it the transit agencies owning and purchasing the vehicles directly from you guys, or how do you foresee that business model?
Yeah, so our business model is right now we run full turnkey, which is kind of a good fit for where the industry's at, where transit agencies are at, but do envision that as AVs kind of more fully mature, that the transit agency or fleet operator could own and manage them themselves. And I think that's a great fit because they often have a lot of maintenance expertise. They know how to dispatch. There's a lot of things that they're very good at. And when you've got a good, mature AV that can kind of fit into their universe, I'm very bullish on that. And I really appreciate the fleet model because I think it gives us opportunities to change how transportation economics and transportation choices work. So I don't have to have something in my driveway or parked at the grocery store every time. I can use more shared rides, and I can go down from I'm a Detroiter. I love transit. I'm embarrassed to say we have 3 cars because that's what we need to make our life work with our babysitter and everything. If I can get down to 2, or if I can get down to 1, that's a huge benefit in terms of land use savings and all kinds of other things for me and for society. So I love that model. I'm more nervous about the robotaxi. It's still a fleet model. I think we still can get some sharing. I'm most anxious about if everybody has an AV in their garage, we're going to just have the same transportation system, but likely more sprawl and kind of like we're not going to have an opportunity to share more and get kind of intelligent density in the civic communities that I'm really hoping for.
Got it. So you're saying, what are your biggest concerns with the robo-taxis? Is it kind of like what you just alluded, Sarah?
Yeah, I think it's there could be some good benefits for robo-taxis, but I think if it's likely to create a more of a competitive system with transit. If you have a motivation to kind of get fares by fares, etc., you're not necessarily incentivized to share rides or kind of use the most efficient methods. I talk a lot at May. I was like, don't compete with a good bus. A good bus, a good train is carrying a ton of people and helping a city be a city and, reduce congestion and all of those things. A smaller AV is really good at that on-demand service, but you don't need on-demand for every trip. If you're going to work every day and a train works for you, please take the train. Like, that's an incredibly efficient mode of transportation for all of us. And the less sharing we do, the more vehicles we have, the more congestion we have, the more greenhouse gases we're creating. So I would like AVs to fit into the network, and so that everything is that the whole network is working better, not just I can take an individual trip whenever I want.
Got it. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. And from a society acceptance, what is your personal perspective? And honestly, I try to focus on being very mindful of the uncertainty in the sort of marketplace, because my assumption is that no one has a clear crystal ball on how is it going to look like in the next 3 to 5 to 10 years. So I try to focus on your personal perspective. So for all the listeners, what is sort of your personal perspective on the society acceptance of AVs, right? Whether it's from a safety perspective, pricing, when the Ubers and Lyfts came out, there was so much friction, and now there's no more taxis and everyone loves them, right? But at the beginning, it was like anything. So what is your perspective on the society acceptance into the AVs?
Yeah, there's a couple things or kind of frameworks that I use is, one, transportation is exciting. It's fascinating. It's also very utilitarian and should be kind of boring. Like, exciting transportation is like a roller coaster. You don't want an AV to be a roller coaster every day. And so I joke with our technologists. I was like, guys, my dream is that AVs are going to be boring because they just work and they get you from point A to point B. Like, that's, and I think that's the big challenge. And I think we actually do a really good job with it. I was in a ride once with a reporter, and I think she forgot that, our safety operator wasn't operating it. It was like an intervention-free route, but it felt normal. That's a win. It's when AVs deliver a service that is useful to you, is safe, etc. They're not always going to make headlines. They're just going to do the jobs that we need them to do. And I think that's my big vision, is that they're useful and we put them and they do the jobs that we need to do, and they're not exciting anymore. But they've got, better economics, they've got better safety. So some of the things that make a really big difference might not be visible to that rider, but it makes a huge difference to the cost. It makes a huge difference to our vulnerable road users, etc. So I think they still will be headline making for a few years, but eventually they're going to get kind of wrapped in and just be a mode of transportation.
Got it. And Sarah, from your perspective, what are the main challenges that you foresee in the next 3 to 5 years?
There's lots. It's making sure that those vehicles can do fully useful jobs and kind of fully mature is I think job number one. One of the conversations I have with cities and partners is, especially if they're a major metropolitan area, I think they're very attracted to the idea of May's approach of change with. I think there are a lot of cities are very anxious about, they've experienced TNCs coming in, they've experienced scooters coming in. There's a lot of change to cities. And so one of my counsels to them is like, hey, get on top of this, work with your state, work with your communities be ready for AVs coming to your community. And I think that's one reason I'm really excited about May, is we give them an opportunity to be in the game and to figure it out and to use the AVs for the jobs that they see needed, not just kind of what a company would like to bring to them.
God. God. And Sarah, changing a little bit of the subjects here. When it comes to business opportunities for entrepreneurs, what is the opportunities that you see in the short and long term horizon, right? I could only think about whether it's maintenance. I know in the electrical vehicle space, which is a sort of a new technology, and we have a lot of friction for folks to keep up with this new technology, and folks to get into those trades to like really know how to mitigate that friction, keeping up with all the maintenance on the electrical vehicles.
Mhm.
But when it comes into the AV sector, what do you foresee for entrepreneurs with opportunities in that sector?
Great question. Some of it's still being figured out, but I think you are right on. I think maintenance is going to be a growing area, and we'll need people who are able to, as simple as clean a vehicle, but clean it sensitively and know that there are sensitive components, and then to make sure that those components continue to work, etc. It's one reason I'm excited about kind of fleet-owned models, is like making sure that these vehicles are well cared for is going to be really essential. There's a lot of kind of transit tech out there as well. For a long time, cars, but buses, etc., just they were very mechanical. They're increasingly technologized, and so real-time information and planning and optimization. There's a lot of software development that is, I think, going to continue to be very important, and kind of even in the broader picture, optimization between modes and kind of the information provided to riders. I think a lot of people talk about the opportunity for if you're sharing a vehicle, if you have more data about where people are going. There's also things like marketing opportunities and integrations with local businesses. Hey, you're getting dropped off. The local coffee shop is offering 20% off if you want to grab a coffee before you go to work. So there's lots and lots of the mechanical parts are important, but also the kind of the softwareization of the world, I think, provides lots of additional opportunities to add value to those trips.
Yeah, that's very well said, Sarah. One of my top books is The Future's Here, Faster Than We Think Of by Peter Diamandis. Now, I don't know if you have read about Peter Diamandis, and he talks about how in the future we're going to have sort of our outlook integrated with our autonomous vehicle network, where it will literally read exactly where you're going, understand your patterns, and if it's reading your calendar, it will say, hey, you have a car picking you up, taking you to your next meeting, and then it will probably drop you at Starbucks, grab your coffee, right? Like it's literally going to be sort of integrated within your outlook.
Yeah, and it's interesting that that optimization of your time is so valuable to us. It'll be very interesting to see how, hopefully, data helps us. Yeah,
Totally. What are your top 3 favorite books, whether it's related to transportation or in any other sector?
Oh, you will discover my inner nerd. My favorite fiction book is Middlemarch by George Eliot. She's like the wisest woman. She's got incredible insights in human nature. So it's also 800 pages, so it might not be everybody's. It is worth it. I also really enjoy behavioral economics, just kind of the mix of economics and psychology. How do people make decisions? So I whip this out like once every 2 weeks, but Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman.
Yes, I read that book. Yeah.
Tremendous. I really enjoy those insights and a little bit of the dispassionate analysis. And then I was thinking about this. One of the other books I really value is called The Wisdom of Crowds. And how do you tap into the greater knowledge that's kind of in a community or in a thing? And I think there's this deep appreciation for, you might be brilliant, but if we can pair you up with other smart people, even not that smart, there's a lot of things that we can do together and get better results if we can figure out how to tap into our broader knowledge.
Got it. That's very, very well said. I appreciate you sharing those books, and I will definitely read Thinking Fast and Slow. So with that being said, Sarah, thank you again for being part of our this episode. It's a pleasure having you here. How can all the listeners get in touch with you, or where can they learn more about what you guys are currently doing?
Yeah. Our website, maymobility.com, has tons of information and kind of links to be in contact with us. Also, feel free to chat with me on LinkedIn. It's a great place. If you could spell my last name, hopefully it's somewhere written down. I'm pretty easily findable. I think the only other Sarah Gryniewicz got married and changed her name. So,
that is awesome. We will make sure to post the notes on the episode notes. So thank you again, Sarah. For all the listeners, thank you again for listening to the Future of Ground Transportation. If you have an upcoming ground transportation program where you need to get some consulting or some buses incorporated into your program, please keep us in mind and stay tuned for the next program. Thank you, Sarah. Have a great day.
Thank you, Daniel. You as well.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Ground Transportation. We appreciate you coming along for the ride. If you found value in this episode and want to hear more, please make sure to subscribe to the show.